Now, there's three lads from Teesside, and what they've done, they've started a podcast, and it's about positive mental strength. And I know that's easier said than done, but if you're given examples, you can sort of start relating to it. Now, their guests include stories from men who've come through really dark times, and they hope to inspire others so that they can stay strong and possibly find the pathway that's right for them. Now, Richie Andrew was one of the trio, and I spoke to him earlier this morning about it, how it all came about.
I actually work in public health in Middlesbrough Council, and back in 2014 when I came over, my boss asked me to do some insight work into men's health for Middlesbrough. Fast forward a couple of years, we had a research insight report with recommendations, we had a men's health plan, several bits of training that we were doing around men's champions, and then one of the things was about launching a campaign to try and shift the culture of men and health. Something at the time called Boro was born, and we've been running that for a few years, telling the stories of men who have made changes in their life, got out of their comfort zone, got out their own way, and basically made some positive changes to their life in terms of their health. And it's just grown from there. We've had a website for a while which has told the stories and had a little mini directory about men's health groups locally, and there's so much great work going on locally. And then just before the pandemic, I actually put a call out to using Love Middlesbrough magazine to like any other stories for men, which we regularly did. And a guy called Matt Holman, who was at Cleveland Police at the time, came forward and started getting involved, telling his story, and then said we were talking about a podcast, and he said he'd love to do it, and he had some great ideas. And then we relaunched Boroman Cans, remained as a campaign within public health. And what we wanted to do is actually take it out of the council, out of public health, and we're going to set it up as a community interest company. So the podcast is being renamed Every Man Can. It's a mental strength podcast, chatting to blokes and women about men's experiences, about kind of mental strength, and that's what we're doing.
When did the gravity of what you were doing hit home to you?
Very good question. I used to work in a workplace health team. I actually lost a friend myself in my late 20s in a car accident, my closest friend. So that was very tough. And for 6 months I struggled. And it was starting to show signs of anxiety. And I had a big panic attack, a bit of a breakdown really. And then I got support through friends and family at work and stuff. And it was counselling. And that started my journey really in terms of like healing. And it was quite powerful. And at the same time I was being trained in mental health first aid. But one of the stories I always tell is I used to go in industry and do men's health workshops, and there was this big lad, about 18 stone, not picking on him, and he was basically very quiet in the whole session. We got onto mental health, then he started to get a bit upset, and what it turned out is that for about a year and a half, he'd been going through about a year and a half of a relationship breakdown with his ex, and he'd not mentioned it to anyone, and he broke down. And I watched this guy who everyone would thought be like, Schwarzenegger sort of tough guy, and it sort of opened my eyes up again. So this is actually every bloke, this can happen to everyone. All it's about really is just talking and getting that support. And they did. We stopped the session, and obviously the stories came out and he got support as well. But the other thing is, I understood from all my men's health work, men can still be men, do you know what I mean? And I think this is the problem, is that like a lot of guys will think if they talk about it, it somehow takes masculinity away or whatever it might be. But it's important, and it's just, we're just humans like each other. And actually, when you do open up, you realise if you've got good, you know your friends are, you realise you're getting supported. It's what we need. It's what we need to do a lot more of. It's that and a whole lot more. But that's the example I always share.
But we box things up, don't we? So I've had 2 marriage breakdowns. I've lost both my parents, but we put them into boxes. It's when those boxes become too heavy, or you've no space for any more boxes, you start to feel the weight of it all. Is the essence to it of catching someone early when they've only got 1 or 2 boxes?
Completely. I mean, the 2 lads we do the podcast with, Matt Holman, Matt Sterling. Matt Sterling's a fireman. Matt Holman started his career off as a mechanic, and then he went into the police. And then both of them have their own issues in life. I've had a couple of marriage breakdowns as well, and I had to get out my own way in terms of my own insecurity that went back to my childhood and all this stuff. And it was only through unpicking it that you start to understand, demonstrating that lads from all different types of backgrounds find different things that works for them. That's one of the keys for it, really is that there isn't like one size fits all. It's not about being a good pill taker. It's not about going to therapies necessarily. It's just about understanding what works for you and getting out your own way, because a lot of blokes are held back necessarily by things that are going on around them, or thinking they have to perform to a certain act that is expected of them. And I think a lot of us put that on us until we get to a point in life and it's usually some point in the 30s. Men usually start to sort of look at themselves in the late 20s, and sometimes something can happen there. But certainly by the time we get to midlife, like something's big is going on. That can end up in a negative way, like relationship breakdown, or men turn to alcohol or whatever, or even addiction. And it's like, no one ever wakes up in the morning and thinks, right, I want to be a heroin addict, I want to be it's like there's a lot of trauma that guys as well can carry, and they need unpicking. And that can mean that our behaviour, whether it's aggression, whether it's like being defensive, isn't necessarily what's going on. There's a lot of stuff going on behind that, and it's about getting that unlocked. And when you do, it's very powerful, and people start to get beyond their capabilities and realise that there's a lot more to them than they realise. So it unlocks people's personalities completely.
When I've been out to see men's health groups, when I chat, I'll go, how many walk past the doors do you get from people before they actually come in? Now, this, when it's on your terms and where you can choose to listen to these stories in your own time, this is an added compliment to that, isn't it? Where people can feel comfortable before they go to those face-to-face therapy sessions.
Yeah, that's it. So two things I'd say is different men, different backgrounds, different ages. There's no one size fits all, but there is you can generalise about men in some ways. There's a bit of a construct, isn't there, in terms of what's expected. But in terms of the spaces for men, the way that services advertise themselves, the way they dress themselves up, actually naturally quite feminised. It's just the way that the NHS is. More women are more likely to access services, so they've naturally become that way. Men prefer to be marketed to, but advertised a different way. It needs to look different. That's why we have men's sheds. That's why we have men's pie clubs and different approaches for men, whether it's walking groups, getting out in nature, challenging themselves, getting out of the comfort zone. That's the sort of thing that every man will be doing more of in the future. And we hope to be able to sort of provide sessions to those that are on the edge of society who can't afford it, and basically using some of the perhaps monies that we can sell, like training, to organisations to say to them, this is how you do it do men's health. This is what we've seen that's worked elsewhere in the country, in other countries, that can work well. So it has to be different language, different look, different feel, and that's what appeals. I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger talking on Graham Norton last week, and it was a story I've heard him say before, which is about essentially what you're saying is you don't become a self-made millionaire. You only get through life with help from other people. And one of the things is about recognising when you need help as well. So that's probably the biggest barrier to overcome, is that actually I can't do this by myself. I'm going to need help to do it. If you link that to men feeling like they are not enough, or they're not achieving what they set themselves out to do, it can be quite a thing to overcome. It's a beautiful thing when you see it happen, though, and we have seen it many times. But it's just a little chink of hope sometimes you need, a little chink of light. And actually hope is derived from having a goal, like having a meaning, a purpose in life. So when people get that and they realise that they have got a purpose, then it gives them hope and it gives them a goal, something to aim for. There's a famous quote that I always mention in my mental health first aid courses, which is about you can't wrap a recovery around a vacuum. You need to have something in it. So good medium long-term recovery, a good healing journey, if you like, a good growth journey, has something of meaning built into it. So for us, it's about doing the podcast. It's about saying up every man can. I do like saunas and cold dips and walking the sea and all that stuff, and triathlons and things like that. And we've all got to find what works for us. We've got to find our little tribes in life and find out where we fit. And I think for a lot of blokes, I feel like we're in a bit of a shakedown moment in where we've changed from an industrial town, post-industrial, and the whole makeup's changing, and there's a bit of uncertainty for men. We've got to work our way through that. Give positive examples of different ages, different backgrounds, what it can look like when it works.
I think it's brilliant. You're all over the socials. How can we find you? How can we find the podcast, Richie?
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, all the big podcast kind of networks. You can find us on there. Just search for Every Man Can. You'll find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter as well, Twitter X. So yeah, you'll find us on there. No problem.
Anything I can do to help in the future, just let me know, my friend, okay?
Much appreciated. And Gary, you've always spoken about this quite openly. We appreciate that as well, because I think we need to see more of that. But it's about also recognising that blokes can be blokes.
Absolutely. And to be able to listen to other people talk about their journey may be the catalyst for you to get the help you need and you deserve. And I urge you to, because it's so important. Nothing's insurmountable. I know that. I've lived it. I've walked in the shoes of many of you, and nothing is insurmountable. So please, 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 Every Man Can. Lovely podcast. 3 guys around the table having a good crack on it. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. It'll make you think. And that's what it's all about. So thank you very much to Richie for chatting to us this morning.